These are some frequently asked questions about differences in California legislative floor operations. How does each house of the legislature handle concurrence items? For example, under Assembly Rule 77, concurrence in any Senate amendment to an Assembly bill requires the same affirmative recorded vote as the vote required by the California Constitution for passage of the bill. When can a concurrence vote take place in the Assembly? The vote on concurrence may not be taken until the bill has been on the unfinished business file for one calendar day. This is referred to as the one-day wait period, and it's used when amended assembly bills return from the state Senate. However, the one-day wait period does not apply during the last two legislative days preceding the end of the legislative session. When can a concurrence vote take place in the state Senate? Under Senate Rule 29, a Senate bill returned from the Assembly for concurrence and Assembly amendments may not be considered until the measure appears under unfinished business on the Senate daily file and an analysis is provided to each senator. But Senate Rule 29 does not include a one-day wait period. How does the Assembly handle floor amendments? The State Assembly is required to submit amendments the night before Friday's deadline. That is Thursday evening generally. That deadline is usually 5 p.m., but the assembly desk sometimes remains open later in the evening in order to process the submitted amendments, which also had to be returned by the Office of the Legislative Counsel. Then on Friday, the floor manager of the Senate bill being amended stands up on the floor and presents the proposed amendments and seeks approval of those amendments by the floor. Approval can be made either with unanimous consent of the members or by a roll call vote, which can be requested by any member. In that case, the bill is amended by a majority of those present and voting. In the Assembly, a bill amended on third reading remains on the third reading file. How does the Senate handle floor amendments? The Senate does not present amendments on the floor, nor does it vote to adopt amendments, but amended bills return to the second reading file. Amendments to Assembly bills are simply processed by the Senate desk. As a result, amendments to ABs are made until the Senate desk is closed Friday evening. The amendments must include an analysis prepared by the relevant policy committee in order for the Senate desk staff to process the amendments to that Assembly bill. In the Senate, a bill amended on third reading is placed on the second reading file, and the following day, the bill then returns to the third reading file. What is the batching process used on the Assembly floor? This is a process that once unanimous consent is received on the floor, it permits a single vote for multiple bills or amendments to be adopted at the same time with one single vote. It's used occasionally where both the Democratic and Republican caucuses in the Assembly have a support recommendation, and there haven't been any Republican legislators who abstained or voted no in committee on the measure. Batching in the Assembly is similar to the state Senate's special consent calendar. Special consent in the Senate is used when there are bills that have support recommendations by both the Democratic and Republican caucuses in the Senate. The Senate's special consent calendar, however, is different than its regular consent calendar. Can business be conducted on the Senate and Assembly floors past midnight on the last day of session? In an odd numbered year, the question always arises at the end of session. When the clock gets close to midnight, can the legislature go past midnight and continue its work? During the odd numbered year, the date of adjournment is set by the joint rules of the Assembly and Senate. This is under Joint Rule 61A14. As we know, the joint rules can be suspended by the two houses if necessary. Can business be conducted on the Senate and Assembly floors past midnight on the on the last day of session in an even numbered year, the second and final year? The even numbered year, that question is clearly answered by the California Constitution. And pursuant to Article 4, Section 10C, the legislature must conclude their work by midnight on August 31st, except if they consider several types of bills that are permitted by the Constitution to be acted upon past midnight.